2021. And any of you that can actually see us live broadcasting from our home shift studios, you can see this, subhanAllah. I'm sitting here enjoying the sun and the sunshine directly onto me from the outside, and I'm not going to move even for a moment. Let me enjoy the moments in the sunshine. Anyway, we are broadcasting live on Friday Night Live on Inspire FM, corresponding today to the 6th of August, which is the 27th, I believe, of Zil Hijjah, a few days away from Muharram 1443. As usual, we are broadcasting live to Luton on 105.1 FM. We're also broadcasting live to some of our sister stations across the UK: Sheffield Link FM, Peterborough, Salam, Derby, Nottingham. Internationally, nationally, you can of course tune in to us via the Inspire FM app, via the Inspire FM website, and of course we are streaming live on Facebook and on YouTube. Tune in. Most importantly, join today's conversation discussion. Will be interesting. Will be good to hear from you and hear your thoughts and your opinions. 01582 481 822, 01582 481 822, 0779 07779481822. Of course, I've been away for a couple of weeks, unauthorized leave, I think the producer would like to call it, but anyways, been away from the Friday Night Live hot seat for a few weeks, but it's great to be back. Glad to be back here hosting the show once again this evening. And mashallah, we've got some interesting topics lined up for our conversation tonight. We're going to be discussing very, very soon. We're going to be discussing Afghanistan, what's happening in Afghanistan. A lot of you would have seen the headlines across some of the media organizations with regards to the fighting within Afghanistan now that the American troops have left Afghanistan. So what's happening in Afghanistan? What's in store for the people of Afghanistan? We're going to be trying to explore it and also look at the legacy of the Americans. 20 years in Afghanistan. The moment they leave, we see fighting ensuing in Afghanistan. We're going to try to pick the brains of some experts and try to understand, help us understand what's happening in Afghanistan. We're also going to be discussing A-level GCSE result days, which are not too far away. So we're going to be looking at what is the forecast for the A-level and GCSE results, how are the schools and colleges preparing for it, and what's the kind of support that's going to be available over the next few weeks for some of those students who are, of course, trying to enjoy summer and also trying to play catch up. Last but not least, in the second hour of the show, we've got COVID update from Pakistan. Now, how many of you are utterly disappointed with the recent news that India has been taken off? Right, India has been taken off the red list, but Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka remain on that red list. A lot of question marks being asked, a lot of questions being asked, a lot of question marks there in people's thoughts, because of course the rates of India are almost second in the entire world after America, if I've got my statistics correct. But Pakistan remains on the red list, so does Sri Lanka, so does Bangladesh, but India is moving on to amber. So we're going to be getting an update on the COVID situation also from Pakistan, because some negative news coming from Pakistan. Apparently there was going to be a regional lockdown happening in Pakistan, so we're going to try to find out what's happening, the latest from Pakistan. And last but not least, of course, we're a few days away from Muharram. We're a few days away from 1443, so we're going to be discussing and looking forward to Muharram and 1443. So that's the lineup this evening, inshallah ta'ala. Do try to get in your comments and your thoughts on any of those topics tonight. 01582 481 822, 0779 481 822. Do remember to like us on any of the social media platforms. Leave any of your comments, and if you did miss me, of course, thumbs up to say welcome back, Sha'ban, to the hot seat. All right, inshallah ta'ala. Right, let's move on to immediately our first topic of the evening, Afghanistan. We're going to be speaking to Zakaria Hassani, Afghanistan-based journalist covering wars and fighting, currently based in Kabul. That's going to be interesting. We're also going to be speaking to Ibrahim Moiz, a writer and researcher specializing in conflict and politics in the Muslim world, with a special focus on Afghanistan and Syria, which is going to be really, really interesting. I've got about 20 minutes to throw as many questions as possible. But just before I do so, just a quick background and a context to what we're discussing. Of course, 2 decades of American presence in Afghanistan, right? And there is absolutely almost nothing to show in the way of infrastructure, political, or educational progress, as some commentators would make it out to be. A defunct Afghan National Army is left behind, vulnerable, right? Of course, put in place by the Americans and the US troops and our allies after 20 years in Afghanistan make a dead of the night, silent and swift exit from Afghanistan, right? For Afghanistan, over the 20 years, for the Afghani people, over 70,000 Afghan civilians have died as a result of the direct war. And we know and we've seen that Joe Biden in early April 2021 made an announcement: I am now the 4th American president to preside over an American troop presence in Afghanistan. 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, he went on, and I will not pass this responsibility to a 5th. It is time to end America's longest war. We're ending America's longest war, and we're coming home, right? So that's the context, right? And I'm going to go straight to my experts now, and I can see Brother Ibrahim. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Ibrahim, and welcome to Friday Night Live.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us. Ibrahim, where are you joining us from? Is it London or UK?
No, right now I'm in Canada right now.
Ah, Canada. So, all right. Okay, we're still cousins, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Commonwealth cousins.
In more than one way, right? So let me put the first question to you, Brother Ibrahim, right? Will the American legacy in Afghanistan be any different to that of the Soviets, right? I've seen one commentator say that US has left with their tails hanging between their legs. Well, what do you make of it?
I think that's a fair comment in the sense that they came in with a lot of advantage. They were, even more so than the Soviets, they had the geopolitical advantage. They were the unipolar, they were the superpower, basically, the only superpower. And, after 9/11, there was a lot of public opinion behind them as well. So from a diplomatic point of view, they had a big advantage over the Soviets.
Yeah.
And I think the last 20 years mostly has been a series of blunders and mishaps, and really a lot of hype that with not much to show for it. So okay. I think it is similar to the Soviets in the sense that they came in with a pretty strong advantage, and they stayed almost twice as long as the Soviets, and they don't really have much to show for it.
Right, absolutely. I mean, thanks for those comments. I mean, American attitudes almost, if not certainly desperation, right, to get out. 20 years of war, America's longest war. They're not hiding, away from those facts. More than almost 2,500 U.S. troops being killed during that conflict. I mean, it doesn't go to, and then at the moment they leave, we see almost utter chaos, prevailing across Afghanistan. I mean, that can be a very good press for the Americans anywhere around the world, can it?
No, not at all. And it is important to note that even before they left, in the, let's say, 4 or 5 years before the Doha agreement last year, there was a lot of fighting going on, and generally it was underreported in most of the world's news. So there has been a lot of fighting going on in the last 4 or 5 years, definitely. And the moment that they have left, basically, the two sides in the war, they see no prospect of winning it diplomatically. So they're both trying to win it, through military means.
All right. So that's interesting. All right. So let's just before I go to my next question, listeners, if you see me looking around and looking down, that's because I'm looking at different screens and I'm trying to navigate between some of the controls and the latest kind of feeds that I'm getting on some of the social media platforms, and then I'm also trying to speak to my guests. So it's not me trying to completely dissociate myself from the conversation. No, I'm not answering my personal text messages or WhatsApp messages. It is primarily focused around the conversation I'm having at hand. All right, Ibrahim. For you, what was the primary motive for the Americans to really get out of Afghanistan? Was it just the case that they've got other priorities? Really, they're not making any progress really within Afghanistan? Is it China that's beckoning as a bigger challenge? Is it the domestic situation with COVID? And is it just pure stalemate and not really being able to achieve any progress after 20 years? And they just thought, cut our losses and let's get out of here.
I think everything you mentioned plays a role. Of course, they started the process before COVID, but I think that hasn't helped them at all, because obviously there's different priorities. But the underlying fact is that for years, even at the peak of their involvement, they weren't really making any progress in terms of setting up a stable Afghan government, or even the humanitarian and development sort of aims that they went in under. Those were largely that was largely a pretext. There was a lot of hype about it, but there wasn't much to show for it.
Right.
A lot of corruption, a lot of projects that started halfway and then they just meandered by the wayside. So yeah.
Right. It's interesting, isn't it? Because Biden, when he was making his comments and the speeches recently, I know he said we went in for two reasons. We went to bring Osama bin Laden, and the second reason was to eliminate Al-Qaeda. We accomplished both of these objectives, right? So our military mission will conclude, right? But they later on said that in fact, the White House press secretary said we're not going to have a mission accomplished moment in this regard, right? And then on the other hand, I think Biden was quoted to have said that we didn't go in there for a nation building exercise, right? So what on earth were you doing for 20 years in Afghanistan? I mean, is this America trying to save some face and some kind of reputation when they come out, because they know they're going to be plastered by the press and all their critics worldwide?
Yeah, definitely. The fact is that when they went in, the pretext was Al-Qaeda, but Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan was not a big, it was not a big movement that was controlling the country. It was a sideshow in the Afghan civil war that was going on. So that was their pretext, and obviously Biden has to put a brave face on it, or he has to put a positive spin on it. So because they killed Osama bin Laden, and because Al-Qaeda is not a particularly strong organization, he can say we eliminated Al-Qaeda, but the fact is that Al-Qaeda could have been eliminated almost 20 years ago. So the nation building thing was definitely high on their priority around 2010. Back then there was a lot of hype about if we build strong institutions and put money into development, etc., we are going to get a lot of results, and that will help us in our anti-terrorism measures. Right. But a lot of that was hype without actually following through. Right. And what we instead saw was a few cities like Kabul or Kandahar, where they had some measure of development projects, but really generally there was a lot of bombardment. There were a lot of night raids. There was a lot of war that was going on, and the problem with them was that they entered Afghanistan under the idea that it was a barbarian country, and they had to basically civilize it, into modernity, and that this was going to end the threat of terrorism. But what happened instead was they entered a very complicated war, which they never understood. So their objectives always kept changing. So now they've gone back to ground zero.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Okay. Let's move on from the Americans and the lack of what they've achieved, right? And like any other imperialist and colonialist power that entered any land historically, they've left a more chaotic circumstance and situation than they actually went into the when they went in, right? But let's move on. So what happened with the Doha negotiations? Because obviously Qatar has been playing a kind of a front for these negotiations. Pakistan's been involved for many years, if not decades, right? In terms of its negotiations and bringing Taliban to the table. A source in the Taliban delegation stated that the movement submitted a proposal that include, a proposal to in terms of moving forward, confidence building measures between it and the government, for example, and there was some kind of releasing of prisoners on both sides. I mean, has that all pretty much come to an end now that we're almost seeing break of total war or civil war between the government and then the Taliban, and then there's the Northern Alliance and all the other kind of permeations that are now coming back?
Yeah, I don't think the process is finished entirely, because I don't think that any of the different sides is capable of total victory. Although I think the Taliban is the single strongest force, but I don't think they're capable of overrunning the entirety of Afghanistan and ruling it. At least not without a lot of trouble, including international pressure or isolation, things like that. But the negotiations are continuing. But the fact is that I think all the sides are trying to strengthen their hand as much as possible, because they don't have faith in the negotiations. They think that this is more of a sideshow. So with the Taliban, they're trying at the moment. They're trying to capture a couple of big cities, Herat and Kandahar and Lashkargah, which they've surrounded for a few years. And that will obviously strengthen their bargaining position with the government. They have been relying a lot on airstrikes. They're basically trying to blast the Taliban out from a strong position. The issue with the government is it's always been a very divided government, like you say. So there have been some northern militias. There have been certain Pashtun warlords in the south. And this government of Ashraf Ghani, when he first came in, he made a lot of hype about state building, about making institutions rather than warlords or whatever. But a lot of that was on paper. It wasn't an actual state institution that he was building. So now that he's under threat again, he has to resort again to these militias, and they're holding most of the fort. The main central Afghan weapon is the Air Force, which has been they've been bombarding a lot of these cities for a while.
But according to one quote that I saw, is obviously Sahabuddin Dilawar, right, member of the Taliban's negotiating team, to Moscow, stated that the Taliban had 85% of the territory of Afghanistan was now under their control, right? I mean, obviously that's disputed, right? But there you go. I mean, the headlines on BBC and of course the West has been that they are now taking major control over the major cities, right? But let's come on to them. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? A lot of questions. I mean, even when we nicely move on to Taliban, I mean, almost when we were discussing Al Qaeda earlier, it was almost used, the terms were used synonymous. Al Qaeda almost it meant Taliban, and Taliban almost meant Al Qaeda, right? But then they say we've got rid of the Al Qaeda, now Taliban are there. So what does that mean in terms of Taliban, A, from an external perspective, right, and B, from a Taliban perspective? Because some commentators are saying that Taliban's entry into negotiations with America, a huge mistake for Taliban itself. But then we've seen Taliban in the past try to form a government and struggle, right, in terms of, like you said, isolation from the outside external elements, right? So what do you see? I mean, what's your kind of analysis in so the both sides don't think that they're making much progress in terms of the Doha negotiations, but they continue on the side. The fighting continues. Taliban, there's obviously negotiations with Pakistan and America. What do you make of Taliban now and its involvement? Do you see it as a more mature a political organization or a religious organization than it was 20 years ago, or do you see remnants of what there was 20 years ago?
I think in terms of politics, they're definitely more mature in the sense of diplomacy, in the sense of engaging with other actors. Especially surrounding countries. In terms of their internal governments, we have to remember that when they first came in the 1990s, it was a sort of filling a vacuum in the situation of a war. So a lot of the criticism that they gained from that, for example, about women's schools, it wasn't a question of choice. It was a question of them being a militia that was controlling a very poverty-stricken, war-torn country in the situation of a war. So, for example, they always said that they wanted women to be educated separately from men,
Mm.
but lacking the resources, they just neglected women's education altogether. So,
Okay.
in principle, they didn't have anything against it, but in practice, there was a lot of neglect of that very important thing. So nowadays, I think they have more resources, at least in the areas under their control.
Right.
Um, they have they take taxation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They get several different sources of funding. So
Right.
from what I have seen, at least some of the territories under their control, they are trying to put into place, proper, like, structured institutions,
Okay.
including schools and whatnot. But I think if they were hypothetically to come back to power, I think they would
Ibrahim,
face a lot of the same issues.
right. So, Ibrahim, let me interject. Sorry, because I've got about 4 minutes remaining. Still a few questions. So quick fire round questions. Do you think that Taliban internationally have that legitimacy to form a government and to be recognized as a government, for example?
I think not. I think their opponents have
Okay,
more
you
friends
still
internationally.
you still don't think so, right? Okay, so
No.
let's talk about the neighbor interest and involvement. So Pakistan's obviously senior military officials and Pakistani political elite in fact played a major role in the US strategy for Afghanistan. We know for a long time, right? So at the
Yeah.
moment, I'm sure they're also involved, and they're the ones who will kind of navigate and bring up, the Taliban into line, into quite frankly, what the American strategy overall is going to be. Well, what do you see? How do you see Pakistan and their position with regards to Taliban and the fighting at the moment? Where do you see that?
Well, Pakistan's strategy is not exactly synonymous with the American strategy. I think they're far more. I think the Pakistan are generally more in line with the. They're more sympathetic to the Taliban, but
Mhm.
at the same time, they're trying to bring the Taliban into sort of the Pakistani diplomatic, camp, which includes engagement with China, which includes with Turkey, for example. Pakistan was pushing very hard for the Taliban to do the
So,
talks in Turkey.
surely a Taliban government would be quite favorable to Pakistan and would be in the interest for Pakistan.
Yes, I think so.
Mm.
The Taliban, more than I think almost any other Afghan group, have generally been, historically, they've generally been more favorable towards Pakistan. I think there's
Okay.
only one or two other groups that would be more favorable for Pakistan.
So how do you see, Ibrahim? Last question for you. How do you see the situation now unfolding, right? Because obviously, we're seeing the headlines, we're seeing the fighting. I heard the former U.S. ambassador to Afghanistan say, he's going to see, he expects the situation to get far worse, open kind of a civil war situation. I mean, are we going to go back 20 years to that kind of a situation where, out and out, civil war, and eventually what happened previously was, of course, the Taliban took over and took control of the country and then formed the government. Do you see something similar happening again? What's your
Um, I think because they're the single biggest group, they have an advantage in that regard as far as fighting goes.
Mm,
But I think internationally in the 1990s, there were a lot of countries that were very hostile to them. Uzbekistan, Russia,
yeah.
Tajikistan, India, etc. I think they're trying to build bridges with some of those countries, like they've been visiting China, Uzbekistan, Russia. But at the same time, I don't think any of these countries would want a Taliban takeover. So if the Taliban did, for example, take over Kabul, I think that might be a red line. In which case these countries would start supporting opposition.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
most of them.
All right, Ibrahim was. Thank you very much for joining us on Friday Night Live. Great speaking to you, inshallah, and we hope to speak to
Thank you
you
for
soon.
having me.
Thank you very much. Right, listeners, that was Brother Ibrahim was a writer and researcher specializing in conflict and politics in the Muslim world with a special focus on Afghanistan and Syria, giving us his expert view on how to read the events in Afghanistan currently, right? If we've got any brothers, sisters from the Afghanistan region, who have got news from back home, it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts and your views. How do you see the events folding in Afghanistan? Any stories that you've got from back home, and what's your interpretation of the events? How do you How do you see the Taliban? Do you see the Taliban as a change, a changing force from 20 years ago, or do you see pretty much the same? Interesting. 01582481822, 01582481822, We're about to go into a commercial break. Half an hour of the show already gone, mashallah. So when we are back, we will be discussing A level and GCSE results days, right? So we're only a few days away, I believe, from the A level results, which are due next week, and then the following week will be GCSE results days. Already a lot being written and spoken about the results that are due to be published. So we're going to be discussing that with some educationalists and taking any of your questions and concerns to some of our panelists. Don't go away. 01582481822, 07799 We're going to be right back.
Assalamu alaikum. In Luton and its surrounding areas, it is now time for Salat al-Asr.
लुटन और इसके मज़ाफ़ात में नमाज असर का वक्त हुआ चाहता है.
This azan has been sponsored by Ideal Properties. Contact us on 01582 721110 or log on to www.idealpropertiesltd.co.uk.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته.
Would you like to sponsor the azan? If so, give us a call on 01582 481 810 or email us on info@inspirefm.org.
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 6:30.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Friday Night Live with me, Hafiz Sha'ban. It is Friday the 6th of August, corresponding to what I believe to be the 27th of Hijjah 1442. We are broadcasting live to Luton on 105.1 FM and across our sister stations on the various channels: Sheffield, Peterborough, Derby, Nottingham, and all of you who are listening and tuning in to us via any of the social media platforms. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Friday Night Live. 01582 481 822, 01582 481 822, 0779 481 822, 0779 481 822 is the number for your WhatsApp messages. We are continuing to broadcast live from our home studios. But those social media messages I do have access to, so please do join tonight's conversation and discussion and let me have your opinions. We were discussing Afghanistan in the first half an hour. We're going to be discussing A-level results and GCSE results in the next half an hour. Now, when I got to be honest, when the producer initially suggested A-level and GCSE results, I thought, what? It's only the 6th of August. Isn't that a bit early? But of course it's not early because these results are due next week. Now we're going to be speaking to, like I said, some experts, some educationalist experts, some local experts, right? And educationalists. So do please remember our number 01582 481 822, 0779 481 822. If you've got any concerns, questions, please get them to me via SMS or WhatsApp, and I will try to raise them with our experts. Now we're going to be speaking to Altaf Hussain, who of course is the principal of Luton Sixth Form College. I understand that we're also going to be speaking to Sufyan Siddiq, who's the director of Chiltern Teaching School. We're going to also try to speak to David Seaton, I hope I've got his surname correct, Assistant Director of Student Recruitment and Admissions at the University of Bedfordshire, right? Who's currently overseeing the university's clearing activity, which is obviously to help students access higher education for the upcoming October term. So we've got a good mixture there of experts, right? So hopefully we can address any questions and concerns that any of the parents or any of the students may have, right? And sometimes, when you have conversations around this in August, early August, you know what, it's like you're distracting people from their summer vacations. But of course you're not, because those of us that have done GCSE results or done GCSE exams or any of the assessments or A-levels are obviously going to be very, very keen and following the press and the results very, very keenly. Of course, it's going to impact your decisions and your careers over the next couple of weeks. So I'm sure you're paying very, very close attention to this conversation. Let me firstly welcome all of my guests to tonight's show. Assalamualaikum and welcome to tonight's guest, to tonight's show rather. I don't have the names in front of me, so I'm not sure. I know definitely we've got David with us, so welcome, David. And is it Altaf Hussain that I've got? Oh, there we go.
Altaf Hafiz. Nice to speak to you.
Nice to speak to yourself again, right? So as I was saying earlier, I was a bit surprised, pleasantly surprised. Why are we discussing A-level results? It's only the 6th of August, for God's sake. I thought we had a couple of weeks, but obviously we don't. Next week's a very important week, Altaf.
It's very important, yes. And I think the key message is to everyone listening is there's lots and lots of support available. So, it's in many ways for us as business as usual. For our staff, we are ready, we are waiting. I'm sure David is and the team. We have been here before. Of course, there are little differences this year. So I think from my perspective, as one of the largest providers of A-levels and BTECs in the country, our students will be into 3 categories, and they'll probably are listening right now. So the vast majority of our students will get the grades that they worked really hard for, and they will be able to go on to university. Many of our students will have actually be very familiar with UCAS and UCAS track, and I'm sure David could talk about that in a lot more detail. And actually, a lot of the time, our students actually found out that they're getting into their university before we even tell them, if I'm honest with you. So the vast majority will be very happy with the grades that they have got. They've worked hard, they've got the grades. There'll be another group who've just missed out. And that's where our careers team come into the frame. That's where David's team come in. There's a Raise Up Foundation as well. There's loads of organisation to help those young people. And that's the clearing process. And for those people who are a bit worried about that, thousands of young people get into university through clearing every year. So it's not a second-rate kind of option. And then the third bit, and that's what's different this year, there will be some young people in the minority who may not be happy with the grade that they've got because they've been teacher assessed this year. And with that, there's a very clear process, if you go onto our website, where they can appeal that grade. And if they are a priority appeal, i.e. they need that grade for university, they need to get that in, they need to fill in a form. We have got very strict guidelines in terms of what the appeal process is. But just go onto our website. So there are very clear processes. There are a whole professional bunch of people waiting for that support. And we will look after our parents, our young people, every step of the way.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Altaf. I'm surprised you said some of the students might not be happy with the teacher's assessments, but anyway, just a slight joke. I mean, at least we don't have the mathematical modeling that we had proposed last year and the chaos that we had last year. Let me go straight to David. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
A very, very interesting times, of course. Altaf's, kind of summarized it very, very, articulated it very, very well. From your perspective, I guess you're expecting a very, very busy week next week.
Yeah, certainly we are. In fact, all the early signs are that there'll be more students eligible for clearing this year than than previously. So it will be a really busy week. So over Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll expect to receive about 3,000 phone calls to our call centre, and those will be students who are either confirming their place with us or they are applying for a September entry. And I think I just want to pick up on something Altaf said there about actually, the students who don't necessarily meet the grades to go into their university, first choice university, the initial reaction is always panic on those students. And I think, the key piece of advice I would give to any student who finds themselves in clearing is don't panic, speak to the tutors. And again, we work very closely with Luton Sixth Form, and they've got a great careers team there. And we will have, between the Sixth Form and the University of Bedfordshire, we will find them a place on a degree course.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much for that. So let me just remind our listeners. So I understand 12th of hang on. It's 10th of August. Firstly, 10th of August, Tuesday, is when the A-level results are due, right? So 10th of August, and then 2 days later, breaking away from the normal traditional kind of tradition where 1 week we get the A-level results and the following week we get the GCSE results. 2 days later, on 12th of August, we're getting the GCSE results. So it's going to be...
Please, can I just chip in? Also, we have a big bunch of BTEC students who also will be getting their results next week as well. So everything is next week for a lot of our young people.
So that is a very, very busy couple of weeks. I can see that. Let me go to my other panelists, Sufyan Siddiq. Assalamu alaikum to Sufyan, and welcome to Friday Night Live on the show.
Wa alaikum salam, Hafiz. Very nice to be on the show with you.
No, nice to see you too. I understand. I didn't know you were a director of Chiltern Teaching School, Sufyan. So good to know that. Right, fantastic. Sufyan, a very busy week next week, right? And of course, the system this time has kind of benefited from some of the kind of trial and error that we had the previous year, but nevertheless, still a very, very difficult year with all of the given circumstances. Very, very difficult year for all industries and elements of society, but especially for education, for students, for teachers, institutions, parents, etc. Right? What's your kind of preparation and readiness from as a director of Chiltern Teaching School for students, I guess, who are going to be coming out with their GCSE results? I guess from your perspective.
I think probably on this call the toughest job is probably Altaf's, and David and I on either side of it, because again, a majority of our young people in our schools in Luton will go to the Luton Sixth Form College. Yeah. And again, that's for them, the most important thing for them is about them getting their place in college, getting onto the right courses in college. That journey has actually started quite a while back, back in March when they started having the interviews and so on. So already for the vast majority, there will be a fairly good understanding of what courses they'll go on to. There is the added complexity of some will be very aspirational or overly aspirational and perhaps won't feel like they got the right course. Some perhaps will perform a lot better than we previously anticipated, and therefore they'll be moved up accordingly. The difficult thing, I think, is the mental health fallout that we're going to experience, which is going to be a bigger challenge than ever before. The 2 years of GCSEs for this cohort have been within the pandemic. The 2 years of those doing A-levels have been within the pandemic. The 2 years for those studying BTECs, whether level 2 or level 3, again, have been within the pandemic. So these young people have really not experienced what everybody else would have experienced as the norm.
Yeah.
So that's been the greatest challenge. And for us, it's about making sure that that support is there available for them.
Yeah. Totally agree, Sufyan. Thanks for that. I mean, in terms of Altaf, you know, almost all fingers come back to you, Altaf. It seems to be you're going to be a very, very key individual. You already are, right? But you are going to be more so for next week. So it's going to be a very busy. I mean, from a college perspective, fully ready and ready to really handle all of those queries and all of those.
Absolutely, and I think sort of it's nice of you to say that, Hafiz. I appreciate it, but it's a team effort. You know, that's not a cliche. And you know, we're not one of the market leaders out of accident. We've been around with the oldest sixth form college in the country. We've been delivering A levels and BTEC for many years, and we have in-house experts, careers experts, exam experts, curriculum experts. Sufyan was one of the team a while ago. He's also part of the interview team. So for us, you know, it is business as usual. You know, we will be delivering a high quality service to all of our young people, not only those young people who are leaving this year to go to university, but also those young people, as Sufyan alluded to, will be coming to us in a few weeks' time. And we've got the experience. You know, we're used to dealing with young people. That's our track record. And we have things in place to make sure that those young people who are in year 11 come to year 12. All of them will have been interviewed. I'm part of the interview team. They had telephone interviews, and all of them will have been offered a place. Now, as and when they get their results, there will be quite a lot of conversations, you know, when we get their results about, is it the right option for them? Sufyan made a really good point. Sometimes, and what I love about our Luton young people, they are highly aspirational. You know, they are highly entrepreneurial. They want to be the best that they can be. Our job is to get them on the right course at the right time so they can make those progressions. And luckily, we have one of the largest options of BTECs and A-levels and GCSEs in the country. We will find something for our young people. They've already had a pretty rubbish experience for the last 2 years. Many of my young people come from disadvantaged backgrounds. COVID will have increased that gap even further. Mental health will increase. So it's my job to have to make sure that we minimize the impact as much as possible and get them back on track so they can go on and do wonderful things. I've said it many times before, the next future Prime Minister of this country will come from Luton Sixth Form College. So we have got to get on the bandwagon right now and to make sure that that dream comes a reality before I retire.
Fantastic, Altaf. Great aspirations there. Good to hear that. Let me go to David, right? So David, run me through what's going to be different from a process perspective this year. Is it not the same? In terms of the students that are applying for universities, get their results, and then, you know, in terms of their options and their offers from universities, right? Apart from the fact that the A levels this year, the results have, or the marks have come, the grades have come from their teachers and the assessments from the colleges or the institutions. The process overall, is that not the same? Is that different? Are we expecting some kind of I don't know, kind of a streamlining process there? Different then?
So the process for the applicant is similar to previous years in terms of they find themselves in clear and they will be contacting universities to establish whether there's courses available, and then if they have got a UCAS application, they can refer themselves through their UCAS track, and if they haven't got a UCAS application, some universities will allow a direct application to them. I think the biggest difference is actually more on the university side. So, you know, going back to the points just raised about actually these students have had a really tough 2 years, and universities really do need to recognise that, in my view. And actually, so what we will be doing at the University of Bedfordshire, yes, we will be looking at the academic grades that the students have, but actually a student is more than just a piece of paper and the grades. So we actually will be looking at their personal statement in much more detail, their references, so that actually we are really sort of beginning to understand who the student is, and hopefully with a combination of all of those factors, we will be able to offer those students a place on our courses. But then I think students will probably see quite a significant change when they actually enroll into the university, because again, universities in the UK, we are putting on additional catch-up lessons, if you like. So going back to what I was saying, we recognise these students have had a really difficult couple of years, and we really do sympathise with them. And so we want to make sure that we're giving them the best opportunity we can when they come into our universities. And if that means that we have to invest in diagnostic, learning diagnostic tools, then that's what we will do. Because ultimately, myself and my colleagues here, we work in education for the student. And that's ultimately, we want to offer the best applicant and student experience we can.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that, David. I don't know if we've got an uninvited guest. I'm just joking. I think is that Sister Rihanna? I can see. Can't hear you.
No, it is, and I'm looking at my phone, just going through, making sure I'm not uninvited. But definitely,
I'm only joking.
Definitely, we will.
You're a VIP guest to Friday Night Live all the time, right? But just joking.
That's the better way of putting it.
Right. So I saw this come up, right? Of course, we're all broadcasting and using our these new technologies now. So I've just seen a Raise Up Foundation. I'm trying to scroll between different screens, so just bear with me, right? So tell me about Raise Up Foundation and where you guys come into the equation here.
So what I will do, I'm going to hand over to Sha'ban to tell you about the Raise Up Foundation and what we're going to do, because the piece of work that, particularly in relation to the discussion that we're having today, that Sha'ban is leading on, and he's, I guess, the expert on in terms of us too. So Sha'ban, do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think Raise Up Foundation as a whole, the organisation, we recently obviously have a centre that we've opened based in Solway Park. We had the opening around about a month ago. The centre is based around creating community cohesion, raising aspirations, supporting aspirations, and working with the local community. We worked in collaboration with a number of schools over the past 2 weeks. In our summer projects, where we've had over 80 pupils attending. And a couple of weeks ago, me and Mohana were sitting and we were thinking about A-level results day, and also having worked with Luton Sixth Form College now and spoken to them over the last couple of weeks, we thought we'd add an extra additional arm of support to the day for results. So here at the centre, we're going to have a number of experts who've worked in and around post-16 education before. They know destinations very well, so we'll be providing some support around clearing and UCAS as well. We'll have someone from the team from Luton Sixth Form College with us on the day as well, so we're glad to be collaborating with the college and working with them. We'll have careers advice here. Alongside that, Dr. Taib, I'm sure you know from Blenheim Medical Centre, will be joining us on the day. He'll be supporting with mental health and well-being, so if any parents do have any kind of young people that they need that support with, they can come down on the day. Seeking Sukoon, I'm not sure if you know the organisation of it, but they'll be here on the day as well, and they'll be supporting with mental health and well-being. We will have multilingual kind of support for parents as well, because those parents that need that support and guidance to understand what the best possible option for the young people is. And alongside that, obviously, there's a great appeals advice, which is naturally going to go and direct yourself straight to Altaf. We'll be directing people back towards Luton Sixth Form College on the day. So looking forward to the day. And the last thing is, the biggest thing is that it's a big celebration. I mean, over, I don't know the exact figures, but I would assume around about 17 to 1800 people are getting their results from the day. So it's a big day for a celebration. It's really, like you both mentioned, for Sufyan, Altaf and David said, these young people who've been through post-16 education in the last 2 years have probably had the most difficult time in education in recent times. They haven't had full access to classrooms, both in high schools and in colleges. And it's a day for us just to celebrate their achievements and their resilience throughout the past 2 years.
Appreciate that. Sounds very positive. I do want to actually come on to mental health very quickly, because recently there's been a lot of discussions about mental health within sport, for example, in the Olympics. We've heard that. We've seen that in the cricket world recently too, with headlines, right? And I want to come on to that. And it was an interesting comment, David, that you were mentioning earlier with regards to how universities are now seeing candidates a bit more, right, comprehensively than just academics and some statistics. And that's interesting. If that really transpires into reality, fantastic, right? But in terms of mental health, right, very quickly, we don't have much time. What are we actually specifically saying here with regards to the students and parents, right? And what is it that we're offering to them for those students and parents that are listening?
Shall I kick off that off on that one? Yep. Yeah. So basically, I mean, UK universities have always we've got a long history of supporting students with mental health, and I think this year particularly, students will see a much more visible presence around mental health awareness around university campuses and making sure that they are very clearly signposted. Now, just want to pick up on the parents because any student who finds themselves in clearing, parents are absolutely crucial, and it's really important that they do have those discussions with the parents because they need to go on that journey with the student as well. The parent needs to be happy with where the student's going. But as I say, universities, as well as supporting students through the process of clearing, we would very much welcome the opportunity to speak to parents and reassure any parents as well if they find their son or daughter going through the process.
All right. Okay. And Sufyan, from your perspective and from the schools and GCSE's perspective, in terms of support that's going to be made available to students and parents from next week onwards.
I think it's a well-known fact. We're dealing with a mental health crisis within the whole system, both education system and the health system. And the one thing we know for sure is we don't have the capacity as schools to be able to provide the right level of support because of how extensive the need for support is. And therefore, organizations like Raise Up and other wraparound services within the community are pivotal in making sure that the school's not the only place where they can get that support. Families can get support in their own time, in the evenings, on weekends, within their own communities. And something that's, again, more community sensitive, that can work around families and not just young people. We will be dealing with young people when we come back in September, but we know between now and September, it's a long time to be without support.
Yeah, that's fine. All right, gents, we've got about 2 minutes remaining. So very, very quickly, I just want to wrap things up and then also look forward to things. I want to go back to Altaf. Altaf, in terms of course, we've discussed a lot over I'm not going to try to recap everything we've discussed over the last half an hour. It looks like a lot of support is going to be made available. The college is ready to handle all of those, that query and the level of, kind of engagement that we expect. In terms of looking forward to it from September, is it business as usual, a college back to normal as we once knew it?
Yeah, the college is back to normal because I think we've got to get back to level normality. And I think the testing and the vaccination process has got to be something that we're all behind in terms of Luton. But we've got to get back to normality. So yes, back to normal. We have got a plan B just in case something happens. But I think we have to work on the assumption that things will work out very well. In terms of the final message to anyone listening, go onto our website. There's loads of information there. Everyone's entitled to the highest quality information, advice and guidance. Go on our website. We're very pleased to be working with the Raise Up Foundation. There's loads of other organizations there. And as Dave said, I think just don't panic. We are there with you. We will hold your hand as tightly or as loosely as you want us to hold it over the next few days and next few weeks.
Right. And Dave, from a university's perspective, are you expecting to be really oversubscribed? Are you expecting all of those quotas for the different courses to be really filled up quite quickly?
We are looking really healthy for September, and we've had a really good recruitment year. And just like Altaf, we are hoping the plan is that we are open business as usual in September for our students as well.
Right, Sufyan, last 30 seconds for you.
No, it's just to say that the support is there, and this is not just for the young people. Results Day is a big deal for families, and important that we see it as a family occasion. So for any families that need the support, please do reach out to the support available in the community through Raise Up and other organizations.
Right, and last up, Raise Up.
Yeah, so Raise Up on Tuesday, Doors will be open from 8 o'clock through to around about 1:30 based on need as well. A number of people will be here on the day to support alongside Luton Sixth Form College. We'll have Paul Hammond here on the day. We'll have a number. Mrs. Sadiq will be with us as well, and a number of other people that are professionals. So we look forward to seeing you on the day. We're based at 5 All Saints Close.
All right, that's exactly what I was going to say. When you said doors are going to be open, where are your doors, right? But you just brought it in at the right moment.
Yes, we're based off Solar Road North. It's in All Saints Close, and it's number 5.
All right. On that note, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us and for the fantastic support. It looks like you're not going to be enjoying it from a vacation perspective. A very busy week next week, and I really wish you all of the best for next week, guys. And thanks very much for bringing in those valuable services to our community.
Take care, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
All right, so that was a very intensive conversation, but we had a lot of experts there, a lot of educationalist experts. And if you've got any questions, please do reach out to us. I'm going to go into a commercial break. When I come back, I'll try to summarize all of that conversation. Don't go away. It's Friday Night Live and Hafiz Sha'ban.
This program will continue after the break. Continue listening to Inspire FM. Inspire FM.
Inspire 105.1
Hi guys, you're watching Inspire FM on 105.1 and my name is Ramzan Mia, and please do follow me on social media and connect with me on Ramzan_Mia and Twitter as well. And yeah, let's just all share the love of Luton.
Add quality and style to your home with a stunning bespoke English, German or Italian kitchen from HM Interiors. Relax and unwind in a luxurious new bathroom fitted by HM Interiors. Free 3D design service for your kitchen and bathrooms. In our one-stop showroom, we have a wide range of quality porcelain and ceramic tiles with all the accessories. 25% opening offer is now active. Please visit HM Interiors, 1 Scott Road, Luton, LU3 3BF. Call 01582 579999 or follow HM Interiors across social media.
Looking for a law firm that doesn't treat you like you're just any client and charge you excessive fees? At MB Solicitors, we're not just interested in your case, we're interested in you. Our lawyers work to get you the right result with personal injury, immigration, family and civil litigation services. At MB Solicitors, we won't treat you like a client, we'll treat you like the client. So call Luton 415-836 or visit mbsolicitors.com to arrange your free consultation today.
Lee Grade Heating Supplies. With over 20 years of experience, we're the largest independent plumbers merchant in the area, specialising in all types of plumbing and heating, as well as combination boilers and mega flow cylinders. Whether you need a new bathroom or a complete new heating system, LHS is the place. Come along to our brand new bathroom showroom at Unit 1, 3 Chorlend Lane, Luton, to see the latest range of quality bathrooms. Or log on to leegrave.net. We're an Interpart-approved stockist for all genuine spares. Our new store in Bedford is now also fully opened. Lee Grade Heating Supplies. Call Luton 84 86 88.
Visit Imran TV Warehouse, the king of TVs, for over 500 boxed TVs with brands including Samsung, LG, JVC, Sony and Philips. From 32-inch smart TVs up to OLED and QLED 86-inch TVs too. With plenty of parking, visit Imran TV on Leegrave Road, LU3 1RF. Open daily from 10 until 7 or buy online. We're on all popular sales sites. We're across all social media and delivery is available. Always excellent prices from this family business who also buy and repair used TVs. Call or message 07442 007 007.
जब एक बच्चा अपने वालिदैन को खोता है तो उसकी दुनिया ही बिखर जाती है। वो ऐसी तकलीफ में मुब्तला होते हैं कि जिसका दर्द कोई और नहीं समझ सकता। ऐसे में जब आप क्राइसिस एड के साथ एक यतीम बच्चे को स्पॉन्सर करते हैं तो ये न सिर्फ उनके लिए एक तोहफा होता है बल्कि आप उनको एक बेहतर जिंदगी जीने का मौका फ्राहम करते हैं। क्या आप 25 पाउंड माहाना के साथ एक यतीम बच्चे को स्पॉन्सर करना चाहते हैं तो आज ही विजिट करें www.crisisaid.org.uk/orphanfund या कॉल करें 0158 2211 066।
आज भी हम दीन के मामलों में लाइल्मी की वजह से बहुत सारी गलतफहमियों में मुब्तला हैं। और इल्म हासिल करना हम पर फ़र्ज़ है। हमारे इल्म में इजाफा करने के लिए मैं पेश करती हूँ प्रोग्राम दीन और दुनिया, हर मंगल की सुबह 11 से 12 बजे तक।
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 7 o'clock.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome back to Friday Night Live with me, Hafiz Sha'ban. It is Friday the 6th of August. It is just past the 7 p.m. mark, and we are broadcasting live on Luton on 105.1 FM. It is corresponding to the 27th, of course, of Dhul Hijjah. Assalamualaikum to all in Luton and surrounding areas, Sheffield, Peterborough, Derby, Nottingham, or wherever you may be joining us this evening. Those of you that have joined us on any of the social media platforms, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, or the Inspire FM app, assalamu alaikum to you also. Do give us a thumbs up on any of those social media platforms. Do give us a like or even a dislike if it's the case. You know, we're happy to have a critical feedback also. And do let us know what you think of some of the stories that we have been covering. We were discussing, of course, Afghanistan in the first half an hour of the show from 6 p.m. And then we were discussing, next week sees the release and the publication of the A-level and GCSE results. A lot of friends and family and friends and they, of course, children will be receiving their A-level and GCSE results. So inshallah, we make dua for you and we pray that you get the results that you have been working so hard for. And as, we were discussing with our educationalist panelists, and you know what? It was actually brilliant. Well done, team. Well done, producers, for putting such a fantastic set of panelists together. And it was great to see that broad advice to our community, for our parents, for our children who might have been listening in. And it's good to know, you know what? We've got such an expert of panelists, educationalists, who are going to be making themselves available. Of course, it is part of their job. They are educationalists and they're going to be making themselves available to parents, to students from next week onwards, right? As students get their A-level results, GCSE results, to help you navigate through the next couple of days. And you know what, as a parent, it can be a challenging time, when some of our children don't quite make the grades that they expected. There can be a lot of kind of negativity and children feeling a bit down, right? So it's very important not to feel down. There are a lot of options available to you. You need to engage, you need to speak to all of those different people who are offering advice and expert advice and counseling, right? Look at your options, look at what plans option B maybe. And I know, of course, Inspire FM and the team at Inspire FM, every year they cover these days very, very exhaustively, and they will also be putting they will also be putting some experts forward to take queries on these days. So all is not lost. Plenty of options, plenty of people to speak to, inshallah, and we pray that it goes well for you. Right, so now we are into the second hour of the show, right? The second hour of the show, and you know what? Our original plan was to almost cover four small stories in this hour. We're going to try to, cover a couple of stories where I'll probably read some press statements from some of these respective organizations, but I'll let you know what we were going to cover. We're going to cover Cage. Right, Cage has been making headlines. Another report that has been issued by Cage, and I'm going to go into a bit of detail shortly. But Cage is challenging the government's guidance to schools with regards to Palestine. Right, so that's a very interesting story. Caught my attention, and I wanted to cover that. Also, another story that might have caught your attention is a story that has been risen from Scotland, and that was Minister Hamza Yusuf, who of course accused one of the nurseries in Scotland of racial discrimination. And we've got a statement from the nursery. We'll be referring to that shortly. And then we're also going to be discussing a COVID update from Pakistan. So we're going to be speaking to some experts. We're going to be speaking to Shagufta Akhtar, who's a TV journalist, I think based out of Pakistan. We're going to be speaking to also Clive Menzies, who's a COVID reporter, and some other individuals. And we're going to be trying getting an update from Pakistan with regards to the COVID situation in Pakistan. And also, the headlines that have been made this week when the British government announced that from Sunday, India, Bahrain, Qatar, and the UAE have been removed or will be removed from the red list, and they will now be part of the amber list, right? In the latest review of the government's traffic light system for international travel. Now, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, all right, understandable from my perspective, because the way I see it, they're doing quite a lot, and the statistics from there are not very high, right? But India, for me, was a very, very big surprise, because of course we have seen the statistics from India, and even if you go to the World Health Organization and look at the table from the World Health Organization, then you will see some alarming figures with regards to India. Now, the statistics that I've seen is that India has the second highest corona cases after the US. So really, a lot of people have been asking this question. If India is on the amber list, why isn't Pakistan on the amber list, or Bangladesh on the amber list, and so forth? And that has also prompted local politicians to write to the government for an explanation, but because of course it does not make sense at all for a lot of people. So I don't know if we're going to get an explanation anytime soon, but let's see what happens. All right. So the plan of action is that we're going to try to start speaking to someone with regards to a COVID update from Pakistan around the 1:15 of the hour, right? But before we speak to someone about the COVID situation, so we're about 7 minutes away. Let's go to the story that I was referring to earlier, and that is with regards to Cage, right, taking the British government to the courts with regards to its handling and its letter of advice that is given to the schools on the issue of Palestine. Now, as you know, Palestine and the issue of Gaza and the attacks against the Palestinian people and the people, the Muslims of Gaza, made headlines in recent months. And that led to a public outcry from all sections of society. And part of the sections of society, right, was the schools, was the educational institutions, right, colleges, schools, and we know traditionally, historically, universities are known to be the bastions of, so-called freedom of speech, where, debate and discussion takes place, and students are traditionally known to be really politically charged individuals, of a lot of principles, ethics, humanitarian values and concepts, and therefore they're really the people who are the vanguard of raising these kind of issues in those institutions. And we know over the last couple of years, ever since all of this new legislation has come in, anti-terrorism legislation has come in, that we've seen a lot of that being silenced in academic institutions, especially universities. But perhaps not surprisingly enough, we're seeing something similar happening in colleges and schools. Hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets. People also took their protests to these institutions, right, in schools and colleges, where students went in with their T-shirts, showing their support for the people of Palestine. And sometimes it might have been just a T-shirt, wearing a T-shirt which says "Free Palestine," for example, right, or wearing symbols of Palestine, even the Palestine flag, organizing action, protests at school. I mean, all of that could have been handled in a very engaging way, in a very positive way, in a way that actually celebrates so-called freedom of speech. But hang on, that's not what quite happened. I mean, the response from schools was often swift and often unforgiving. I don't know what there is to forgive in the first place, right? And since May 2021, Cage have handled almost 50 cases of students, right? Almost, 50 cases of students, and even sometimes teachers who were censored for expressing and exercising support for Palestine, right? And it's incredible because I had a very quick look at the report, right? And what the report shows, and it's fantastic the way the Cage did it, is they broke it down into the number of people that were censored by schools and for what reason. So in some cases, the fact that you're wearing a t-shirt, in some cases, the fact that you're wearing a badge, in some cases, the fact that you were just, trying to organize some, public raising of public opinion with regards to Palestine. And what did it result in? In some cases, it resulted in verbal warnings, 22 cases out of those 47, 48. In 10 cases, the sanctions that schools applied were categorized in pre-warning, prevention of action. In sometimes, physical intervention, removal of posters, banners, stickers from students, detentions, suspensions, even exclusions, even police involvement, prevent referrals, and the likes. And that's quite incredible. Absolutely quite incredible when these institutions are supposed to be the kind of bastions of freedom and discourse and debate, and almost saying we're open to all opinions and every opinion, and you're allowed to come and discuss and engage. And that's what these educational institutions are supposed to be, aren't they? Where you discuss and you debate and you listen to another opinion. And you know what? If you disagree, you can obviously have your opinion, and you can have an argumentation and debate. But it seems like that when it comes to Palestine, these institutions haven't been very tolerant at all. And of course, that's also down to the government, and the government's advice that has been coming through to them hasn't exactly been in favor of engaging and supporting a conversation around Palestine. So anyway, Cage is taking that action, and we did try to contact Cage to discuss their report, but they were unavailable. But anyway, that was one of the first stories that we wanted to cover. I thought I'd make you aware of it so that you know what's going on. All right, we've got Clive that has joined. Okay, great. So we're going to come on to COVID shortly. But before that, there was another story that caught my headlines. I caught my attention, rather. I don't know if anyone else actually saw this story, but it was quite an alarming story. I'm not surprised by it, I have to unfortunately admit. But it was an incident in Scotland, and it was a case of one of the nurseries which seemed to be, right, so which allegedly, right, we're not going to say, it did or it didn't, because that's not our remit of judgment, but it appears to be, and at least according to the Scottish minister, Hamza Youssef, he accused the nursery of racial discrimination. And what actually happened was, that a couple of parents, they tried to contact this particular nursery and tried to seek admission for their children. And when the name sounded of an Asian heritage, apparently there were no vacancies in the nursery. But when the name, and then some of these other individuals and even some media outlets then did this query and tried to do an example, they actually contacted the nursery. And when they actually contacted the nursery with a non-Asian name, non-Asian kind of heritage name, then apparently the nursery had, surprise, surprise, capacity and room. But anyway, a spokesman for the nursery involved said, "Our nursery is extremely proud of being open and inclusive, and any claim to the contrary is demonstrably false and an accusation that we would refute in the strongest possible terms." Anyway, so that conversation is continuing, and since we don't have anyone to speak directly with regards to that, it would be unfair for us to pass any judgment. And as I said, the nursery concern has rejected those allegations by the Scottish minister Hamza Youssef, who accused the nursery of racial discrimination. All right, we're going to move on, and we're going to be discussing the situation of the COVID update. in a moment or two. Just a reminder, listeners, this is Friday Night Live, and it is Hafiz Sha'ban in the driving seat this evening. Great to be back after a couple of weeks of vacation and absence from Friday Night Live. It is Friday the 6th of August 2021. We are broadcasting live 01582 481 822 01582 481 822 0779 0779 481 822 for any of your social media messages. Right, we're going to go straight to our next story, where we do have some guests that have joined us already, and we're going to be discussing a COVID update from Pakistan. So I want to get an update from Pakistan to find out what is the latest situation with the COVID, right? Because even though the statistics are lower than India and some of the other countries that have come off the red list, nevertheless, it doesn't mean that we are off the hook in Pakistan. I have seen some of the headlines, and I was a bit surprised when I saw some of these headlines, because I wasn't necessarily aware of them. But I was hearing that the cases of COVID have been on a rise in Pakistan, and especially in Sindh, the spread of coronavirus, the Indian variant has spread into Pakistan. And in fact, one headline said it was reaching an alarming levels in Karachi. The province chief minister said a local lockdown would be enforced within Karachi. They called it a loose lockdown from July the 31st to August, or to the 8th of August. But it was going to be different from last year, and some of the overall statistics from the leading press of Pakistan is showing that the positivity ratio of COVID-19 infections has increased across Pakistan. But like I say, if we put it into perspective, it's nowhere near India. India, the headlines that I'm reading to you right now, fresh off some of the media outlets and the World Health Organization, are showing that India has the second highest corona cases after the US. Now, yet India has been removed from the red list, and we also know that India actually joined the red list very late in the day, and there was a lot of question marks that were being raised. Why is India not being put on the red list? Because we saw the results of the Indian variant of coronavirus when we saw the headlines that were coming from India as Indian hospitals ran out of oxygen. Now, to put the nail on the head, and almost an alarming kind of quote, Health Secretary Sajid Javed said changes to the travel list are based on the latest data and expert public health advice. And now, look, Sajid Javed, I'm no health expert, but the latest data wouldn't suggest taking India off the red list, right? Quite frankly, if you're going to take someone off the red list, shouldn't it be Pakistan and Bangladesh in comparison to India and looking at their statistics? Anyway, some food for thought. Let me know what you think, my listeners. 01582 481 822 0779 481 822. I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to go to my experts, right? So where are my experts? I don't see them. Producers, I think Shagufta Akhtar has joined us. Shagufta, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Friday Night Live. And we've got Clive also. Let me go first.
Good evening.
Can you hear me, Shagufta?
Yes, I can, thank you.
Okay, great. So are you joining me from Pakistan, or are you actually UK based?
No, I'm Nottingham based.
Oh, Nottingham based. Oh, fantastic, Nottingham, right? Okay, so let's get an update. I know you're working across TV and journalism. Have you been following the events in Pakistan with regards to the COVID? I mean, I've seen a lot of headlines which have caused a bit of alarm bells to raise for myself, because I've been trying to visit Pakistan for a while and I haven't been able to, precisely because it's still on that red list. What is the current situation? What's your reading of events?
Well, I was in Pakistan last year, just before the whole lockdown was introduced in the UK. And it was quite interesting watching it from there, because I'd just gone on for a 1 week business trip. And there were people fighting over toilet rolls, which was quite amusing to watch from over there, thinking, what is it that I'm coming back to? So shortly after coming back, we had the lockdown in the UK. But the Pakistan situation at that time was very different. People were going about their normal lives. There was an understanding that we have COVID about in the world, especially in the UK. But there was no real sense of urgency or no real sense of panic. People were going about their daily business, as I was as well, shopping. But there were some concerns within political circles, and politically there was some movement towards restrictions, towards larger gatherings, and some of those had been restricted, but the message hadn't quite been filtered through to the rest of the population, although it wasn't seen to be taken as seriously. Now, when I came back to the UK after my very short little trip, it was quite amazing to see the panic in the shops. You know, you go shopping in the high street, the stores, the shelves are all cleared of shopping. And naturally, when you come back from holiday, you know, you go shopping, and I was struggling to shop. And that was where we started taking an interest in this and thinking, what is the ground reality? How are people actually getting affected? And obviously in the UK, we have been and still are being affected by what's happening with COVID and restrictions, our daily lives. We're out of lockdown at the minute, but obviously we're concerned with the new Delta variant and the vaccinations here. Now, talking about Pakistan, the chaos that was created with the introduction of the amber list and the red list of countries was extremely significant. There were holiday makers, as I was, that were stuck in the country. There were families, and without any real warning, as such, Pakistan was added to the red list, along with the Philippines, Kenya, Bangladesh, around April the 4th. And people literally had days, as are the ones stuck in Mexico at the moment, literally have days to fly themselves back. And the amount of chaos that had caused for British travellers overseas in Pakistan, with a number of chartered flights that were scheduled to bring everybody back, with people, there were reports of, airlines booking double tickets and the seats not being available. There was mass amount of confusion and panic.
Well, so what about the current situation, Shigufta?
Currently we have, what do we have? Since Chief Minister.
Lockdown in Karachi, right? What about the areas, Islamabad, Lahore? What's the situation in Mazan?
At the moment, we have 86 deaths that were reported in the country. In Pakistan, with 14 of those being in Karachi. And I think regionally, as is the case in the UK, I think the variant is following similar patterns where it's higher in some regions, less in some regions. And obviously, even here, we're still learning lessons as to why it's higher and lower. The demographics in Pakistan are obviously very different. We have we have a population of 220 million. 27.8 million of those have had one shot of the vaccine, with about 5.9 million being fully vaccinated. So the country is doing what it can with its limited resources in terms of trying to combat what's happening there. So overall, 25%, especially in Karachi, because it seems like it's hit Karachi the hardest. 25% of the population of Karachi, that they've seen a rise in COVID cases there.
Okay, let me go to my other guest, who's very, very patiently waiting and perhaps making notes on what we're discussing. Clive Menzies, COVID reporter. Clive's experience encompasses a wide range of management positions within the financial services and technology sectors, augmented by his understanding of political economy derived from the co-creation of research and analysis since 2012. That's very, very interesting, Clive. And now you're a COVID reporter. I mean, that's very interesting if that's the bio that I've been given. Clive, give us an update from your perspective as a COVID reporter. How are you reading the events in Pakistan, but how do you justify, how do you understand what the government's done with regards to getting India off the red list, and Pakistan and other nations remain on the red list, yet their rates are far lower than India in comparison?
Well, thanks for that, and good evening, and it's good to be here. I'm not a COVID reporter as such. Basically, everything is connected, and I've been involved with many other people in developing an understanding of what's going on in the world. And most people who rely on mainstream media and even much of social media actually are being fed propaganda, which in no way reflects the reality. And the first, if you like, problem that people need to overcome is that they are at no risk from COVID, not least because COVID has not been isolated. The Bulgarian head of the Bulgarian Pathology Association a year ago said there were no post-mortems across Europe that actually proved a COVID death. And I've been in correspondence with the Royal College of Pathologists to try and get them to release post-mortem data. What they do admit is that there are very few post-mortems and they're not releasing the data. One can only conclude that if there was data that showed that people had died of COVID rather than being diagnosed by tests which are blatantly unreliable, and we can go into that if you like, but the fact that they're not proving any deaths, and this is a global issue, this is not affecting Pakistan, and this is all driven by money.
Right, let me go back to Shagufta. Shagufta, what your thoughts, right? As a journalist, as a broadcaster working in journalism, I mean, Nottingham's got a healthy, Pakistani community. I mean, from the social media messages I've seen, there's been an outcry. Why is India off the red list? It was one of the last countries to go on the red list, first ones to come off. What about Pakistan, Bangladesh in comparison?
Yeah, interesting point, Clive Menzies. That's a big school of thought that follows those kind of theories. So I've got to acknowledge what Clive has said.
Well, I don't deal in theories so much as facts. And the fact is that can I just finish this point? On the 19th of March 2020, the UK government, and it's still on their website, downgraded COVID-19 as a high consequence infectious disease. And yet we had the lockdown 4 days later. There is something extremely suspicious, and I can go into great detail, but I know you don't want to do that.
Unfortunately, we don't have the time to go into the detail of that. But Shagufta, what do you make, and what is the community kind of feeling and response to this latest announcement by the government of India getting off the red list from Sunday, and Pakistan, Bangladesh, and other countries remaining? What are you hearing?
Well, the community is in absolute uproar. They are mad. They are absolutely mad about it. They can't believe. I mean, according to them, there's obvious sheer-cut discrimination, and they are calling for that. We have some of our high-influencing MPs that have written to the Prime Minister. They have started writing letters. We've had all of our top Asian Muslim MPs that have written and are also equally as concerned as to why and how this decision has been reached to allow India to be off the red list, because it was India that is the home, as far as anybody is concerned, of the Delta variant. It came from there, it spread from there, and it spread quite rapidly. And to think that Pakistan is on the border of India, the infection rate didn't actually come into Pakistan as much as anybody had thought it would be. So Pakistan has kept itself pretty safe from, the invasion of COVID on its border. But at this moment in time, people in the UK are absolutely up in arms over it. They are very disappointed. They have family that is stuck out there, and the cost of quarantining when you come back from Pakistan is actually very, very high for those communities that are already marginalized.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the next point that I was going to say. So,
it's increased by £535. I mean, everybody's doing their maths here, and it's about to go up on the 12th of August, and you're going to go up from paying for a single person from 1,750 to 2,285 for a 10-day quarantine, and that's on top of your holiday expenses. And we have families back in Pakistan, so it's not like we're on holiday. We're actually visiting family for various reasons. There's gifts, there's money, there's a complete life that goes on in those countries that people have responsibilities for. And then to add a whopping £1,750 for the first person, because obviously there's discounts for additional people and children. But nevertheless, you've still got that first additional cost of a single traveller.
Right, but Shagufta, is there a case for that, a legitimate case for that in terms of the vaccination rates, right? India versus Pakistan, adoption. Maybe what else can I potentially think of? Maybe the fact also, I mean, India is probably as guilty as Pakistan is in this regard. To what extent is the official data, available and reliable, right? Because there's always a question mark around that, isn't there?
Well, I've taken some of my data from Al Jazeera, and I'd like to think that they've got their facts right. Because obviously, with data in and around those countries, it's open to interpretation as to whether you're going to believe it or not believe it. But what we're going to look at is the data from the UK government and what they're using to determine some of this appalling decision making, may I say, that they're using for red, amber lists and green lists. And you've got a whole category that you've got to get your head around and figure out which countries where and how soon any country enters into that red list at this kind of notice. And it's affecting the travel industry, the holiday makers. so badly. It goes. This argument extends further than Pakistan. It affects the whole travel industry. It's affecting aviation and it's affecting holidaymakers.
Yeah, it does, but we're sticking to Pakistan for the conversation this evening. Let me go back to Clive, right? Because Clive, I mean, to what extent is the money the big factor here in all of these decision making? I mean, look, come on, let's be honest and frank. I mean, that statement from the health secretary that our decisions are being made on data and science. For God's sake, I mean, I can't. I'm not a scientist here, but I can't understand how India can come off that list, right? When the statistics show you completely the opposite. And it's exactly the same case when India was put onto the list, right? The statistics were showing you that it was going rampant in India. We saw the scenes on BBC News, people are, having to, no space to bury their dead ones, to cremate their dead ones, right? Hospitals, I mean, the scenes were incredible with India sending satellite and all sorts of, apparatus to Mars, but we're running out of oxygen cylinders in our hospitals, right? But India wasn't on the red list at that stage. To what extent is all of this being driven by the big money factor, Clive?
Well, everything is driven by money, and that's quite a complex argument. We put a paper together, which I'll send you, which you can give to your listeners if they're interested. But essentially, this India-Pakistan conflict, if you like, is being generated specifically to produce what it's produced. A great deal of anger on both sides. Obviously, Modi has been fueling anger on religious grounds and ethnic grounds, and effectively creating some sort of apartheid within India. This is just adding fuel to the flames. These stories and those statistics are not reliable. They are in no way indicative of reality, and therefore it is to divide. And the money controls by creating alternative narratives, and through the structure, it hoovers up money off people who think in order to go abroad, they've got to have a vaccine, they've got to self-isolate, none of these things are lawful. And there is, under the United Nations Bioethics and Human Rights Declaration, none of this is lawful. And governments are claiming it's an emergency, but there is no emergency.
Yeah, but that's the point, Clive, isn't it? I mean, my nephew's getting married at the end of this month, and he was looking to book a holiday away. Now he's a youngster, and I said, well, you can't go anywhere at the moment. You're not vaccinated, right? And that's the point at the moment. Even if you're going to travel.
Yes, but what we need to do is decide what is more important: that we go on holiday this year, or that our kids and grandkids are going to be enslaved in a system that if you think this is bad at the moment, things are heading in a very dangerous direction. And unless we realize what's going on, then going on holiday is going to be the least of our problems. Eating, feeding ourselves, heating our houses. They're rationing energy, they're rationing water, and they're doing this around the globe.
I think, Clive, I think you're raising bigger concerns than just the jab itself. I mean, we're living in a big police state almost now, or we've seen the latest legislation.
Well, everything has a context.
We're policing everywhere, but that's taking a discussion in a different direction. But I get your point. Very valid concerns, because the so-called liberty and the freedoms that once Britain and the Western states espoused to and to the world are pretty much withering away at a very rapid pace. I get your point. But let me go back to Shagufta, because I want to ask a quick question to Shagufta before we're going to have to move on, sadly, to a different topic. And that's the current status in terms of Pakistan and then going to Pakistan, right, Shagufta? So, I mean, at the moment, we're seeing the costs are spiraling, right? To what extent are you expecting, and are you seeing, that political pressure being built up? And are we optimistic to get a result within August, do you think, where Pakistan may be removed off the red list, or Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, etc., and go onto the amber list in line with what's happening with India?
Well, I've been asked that $1 million question 1 million times over, and I'm going to have to agree with Clive on this one, and I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon as such. I mean, political pressure really doesn't apply to this government that's in power at the minute. They seem to get a kick out of upsetting as many of their community as they possibly can. So we're not very happy with the way the government's handling of this, and the criteria. Let's go to the criteria that they're actually using or allege themselves to be using, and that's to move them from one list to another list, because I'm sure there'll be another list for Pakistan to go onto, is the percentage of the country's population that has been vaccinated, the rate of infection, the prevalence of variants of concern, and the country's access to reliable scientific data and genomic sequencing. Now, whatever that means to the scientific community, I'm sure they have a better understanding of this. But if we were to use that criteria, their printed criteria on, like, say, India and Pakistan, because that's where this argument has come from, then 4,722 people tested positive on the 3rd of August, which makes it the rate of 14 per 100,000, which is well below some of the amber list destinations that are currently enjoying no travel restrictions by the UK's own criteria. So we've got that. Whereas if you do look at India, I mean the figures I have is like, well, of a population of 1.38 billion, 31 million, there's been cases of that with 427,000 deaths. So that makes it a pretty high rate, whichever way you look at that from.
Yeah, no, that's true. I get that. We might get lost into the details there, but I get your point, Shugufta. What about in terms of day-to-day life at the moment coming from Pakistan? I mean, I haven't spoken to someone recently from Islamabad or any of the main cities, apart from the Sindh province, which I was discussing earlier, the kind of loose lockdown being enforced and then coming to an end in the next couple of days. Is it business as usual out there in Islamabad and other?
Well, this is just it. I mean, Pakistan's a vast country, and there's different rules in different places. There's like we have in the UK, it's managed on a city by city, on a regional basis. They've got a very tight grip on this situation here. I mean, in terms of before we were on a national lockdown, it was region by region, and we had all these various tiers, tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3. And tier 3 couldn't travel to tier 2. But Pakistan doesn't operate a tier system where people of one region can't travel to another. So in one region of the country, there's no sense of lockdown, because they're the kind of reports I'm getting back from people on the ground. And they're saying, well, actually, our daily lives haven't really been affected. We're still going about our business, depending on which region in Pakistan there are. And then you speak to somebody else from a different part of the country, and they're giving you a completely different story. I think politically, those at the top end, they are following some sort of procedures, some sort of restrictions. But I think locally on the ground, when it comes to like rural villages, there's no sense of COVID over there at all.
Yeah, I mean, I have to concur with the fact that with my cousins out there in Pakistan, when I speak to them, they seem to be having a lovely time out there, enjoying their time out there. Obviously, they've got no external pressure, so they can extend their holidays out there, because even the few people who did manage to, bite the bullet, or and pay the quarantine charges. I mean, they are almost becoming now prohibitive. As you said, the rise in the cost is just almost prohibitive, right? For anyone.
Sorry to cut you there, but the message that I've been given is like with some of them, those that need to come back because they have families or jobs or something to come back to the UK. But the rest of them are quite enjoying their holiday out there. They've extended it, and they said we'd rather not be coming back. And they say, well, what are we coming back to exactly? We're coming back to a life of restrictions. It's not really for us. We're enjoying it out here, and we plan on staying out here, and we're going to ride this out for as long as it takes.
Right. I wish the people of Pakistan the best, and those who are enjoying their holidays out there. And the last quick point for Clive. So, Clive, what do you think should have really happened in light of the pandemic? What's your final thoughts on it?
Well, there is no pandemic, and the governments are not in charge, neither the Pakistani government, nor the Indian government, nor the British government. This is all being run by money, because that's what the structure runs on.
Is this all to the benefit of the pharmaceutical conglomerates? Is it?
Well, there are relatively few people who are beneficiaries, but it's much more to do with the structure that's been created, and it dates back 2,500 years. And it's just, we're now in the final phase where they're seeking to reduce and plunder the population to the ultimate extent.
All right, Clive Lindsay, Shugufta Akhtar, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Have a lovely weekend, and thank you very much for joining us on Friday Night Live. Unfortunately,
thank you
very much. Right, listeners, that was Shugufta and that was Clive joining us, giving us their perspective on the situation of COVID when it comes to Pakistan and the Asian subcontinent, right? So we're discussing some views there with regards to the Indian variant. and the statistics of COVID in India, Bangladesh, to a lesser degree, Pakistan, and the decision making of the government. I mean, to be frank, yeah, it has raised a lot of eyebrows across the UK, and in the words of Shagufta, there's uproar. And you know what? Absolutely understandable, because when I saw those headlines, there was an uproar for myself because I just couldn't understand it. Couldn't understand the science. And indeed, I don't think there's much science behind it from where I see it, but there is a lot of money behind it. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we are fast approaching the 2 hours. Great to be back on the hot seat, Friday Night Live. Good to be back after a couple of weeks of break. I haven't seen any thumbs up and any comments and feedback coming back. I don't know if you've missed me out there. If you have, do let me know. I think the producers have missed me, which is good to know that. Anyway, we're about to come to the last quarter of an hour of the show, inshallah. And we're going to be discussing very, very shortly Muharram, and we're going to be discussing 1443. Now, are you aware of the fact that we are days away from the sacred month of Muharram, the first month of the Islamic Hijri calendar, starting in a few days' time? And with the starting of the Hijri calendar is also the commencement and the beginning of a new Islamic calendar. Are you aware? 0582 481 822 0779 481 822. Right, inshallah. So we're going to be speaking to our UK resident Sheikh Suleiman Ghani shortly, inshallah, on the issue of Muharram and the issue of the new Hijri calendar, which, as I said, is going to be starting in a couple of days' time. And subhanAllah, for those of us that perhaps are not aware, then great. This is an opportunity for us to make you aware of the new Islamic calendar year starting in a few days' time. And those of us that are not also aware, let us also make you aware of the fact that this is an incredible month that is about to commence in the form of Muharram. And Muharram, of course, is one of the sacred months of Islam, right? It's one of those sacred months of Islam, and it's actually an incredible time of the year that we're going through, because when we are in this period of Zul-Qa'dah, Zul-Hijjah, Muharram, then it means we're actually transiting through 3 sacred months of the Islamic calendar all at once. So these almost 90 days are 90 days of the Islamic calendar and months, which are all sacred. And that's quite incredible, actually, because you don't get that in any other part of the year. You get Ramadan, and that's 1 month, and Ramadan has its sacredness and its sanctity in it being Ramadan. You have Rajab, which is a sacred month which precedes Ramadan. But then you have this block, right, of 3 months, Zul-Qa'dah, Zul-Hijjah, and Muharram, where you have the 3 sacred months coming together. And that provides itself a very unique opportunity. And Muharram is a huge month, is a very, very significant month in terms of its sanctity. I mean, subhanAllah, is actually known as the month of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So this is an incredible description that is being given in one of the hadiths of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And hopefully when we come to Sheikh Suleiman Ghani, we'll be discussing that with Sheikh Suleiman Ghani, right? Also, this is a month that's been sacred not because of recent history, right? But it's been actually sacred from the very, very beginning, right? From the very, very beginning, from the time of Adam alayhi salam, right? The significance of Muharram has always been there. It's been a month, right? That when you look to Islamic text and when you look to what the scholars have written with regards to Muharram, and for some of it we have evidence, in terms of the hadith of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and in some of the cases, not necessarily evidence, but a lot of the scholars have mentioned it with regards to some of the historical events that have taken place in the month of Muharram. Imam Ghazali, in the tafsir of Ibn Kathir, or even Umar ibn Khattab, when asked with regards to the day of Ashura, for example, why was it considered so noble? Umar ibn Khattab, in one narration, is listed a few events which have taken place on Ashura, and specifically when we talk about Ashura in the context of Muharram, Ashura literally is the 10th day, right? The 10th day of Muharram, and that 10th day out of the month of Muharram is also very, very significant. As the most significant part of the month of Muharram is the 10th of that Muharram, of the 10th of the month. And that day itself, right, a lot of events are said to have taken place on that day, right? So, for example, it is said to be the day in which Isa ibn Maryam ascended, was taken up to Jannah. It is said to be the day when Nuh alayhi salam, right, Nuh alayhi salam and the believers who were upon the ark, right, were saved, and their ark came to a rest on that day. And in fact, in the tafsir of Ibn Kathir, he mentions that, right? And in fact, in the narration reported by Imam Ahmad, it was Imam Ahmad mentioned that it was on this day, Ashura, that the ark of Nuh alayhi salam came to rest on Mount Judi, and that's in the tafsir of Ibn Kathir, right? And there's many other big events that have happened that other scholars mentioned that happened on this day. It is said that Yunus alayhi salam was saved from the belly of the whale on this day. Sulaiman alayhi salam, Ayub alayhi salam, for example, was cured on this day. Adam alayhi salam was forgiven on this day. And then other event, the big event that took place on this day, which is supported by the hadith of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was that Musa alayhi salam, Bani Israel, right, was saved on this day from Fir'aun. Right, so I'm just going to try to find out what's happening with Sheikh Suleiman Ghani. Okay, do we have an update from SSG producers? Please let me know, because it is 50. Okay, we don't have an update, so I can continue having this conversation. Okay, as soon as he joins, please do let me know. But otherwise, don't worry, listeners, we are well prepared, because when we talk about the events, the great events, there's a couple of events that are obviously established as authentic, and we know that they did in fact happen on the 10th of Muharram. And the first one that I was discussing was, of course, the saving of Musa alayhi salam, Bani Israel, from Fir'aun. And we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved Musa and the people of Bani Israel from the tyranny of the Pharaoh, in Muharram, on the 10th of Muharram. And that's why, we know that, in fact, when it comes to even the fasting, before I touch upon the fasting in the month of Muharram, it is really interesting to actually know that the people, even before Islam, the Quraysh, for example, the pre-Islamic era of Mecca, the Quraysh, they knew the importance of Muharram, and they used to fast in Muharram, and they used to fast specifically on the 10th of Muharram, even before Islam. And in fact, there's a narration by the mother of the believers, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, in which she mentions that the people used to fast on Ashura, the 10th day of Muharram, even before the fasting of Ramadan was made obligatory. In fact, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked the people to fast, and they used to fast as if it was obligatory upon them. But then when the fast of Ramadan later were prescribed, then the fasting of Ashura and Muharram was made non-obligatory, right? And the significance of the month of Muharram was well established well before, right? Well before even the Muslims came to Medina. Now, but when they came to Medina, then the Prophet ﷺ found that the Bani Israel were actually fasting, right? Were actually fasting the day to commemorate the saving of the Bani Israel and Musa alayhi salam from Fir'aun on this day. And that's when the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that if I'm alive, then the following year, then we will fast 2 days, because we have a greater right over Musa alayhi salam than any other people, because we are, of course, believers like the believing people of Musa alayhi salam and Musa alayhi salam, and therefore we are instructed and advised and recommended to fast 2 days, either the 9th and the 10th, or the 10th and the 11th. Now, what is important and inspiring for me is that when you look at this, example of Musa alayhi salam. And when you also reflect upon Muharram and Ashura, now Ashura is the 10th of Muharram, then this is a day and a month of great trials and tribulations, but also a day of salvation, a day of victory, a day when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave victory to the believers and put an end to the tyranny of the different tyrants that have existed throughout the period of history. And subhanAllah, so we should take inspiration from that, that just like the tyrants of the past have, were defeated by the believers and by the faithful, then inshallah the tyrants of today will also be defeated by the faithful today. Right. Subhanallah. Should be connecting shortly. All right, so we might get Sheikh Suleiman Ghani shortly. If not, inshallah, I will of course continue with some of the commentary and some of my notes, inshallah. Apart from that, also it's very interesting to note that when we talk about the Hijri calendar, why do we refer to it as the Hijri calendar? What does that actually mean? What does that actually denote? What is that actually referring back to? It's very, very important. Now, it's actually interesting when the conversation and the consultation took place amongst the Muslims in terms of what should be the starting point of the Islamic calendar, right? What should be the starting point of the Islamic calendar, right? So there were great events, watershed moments that had already taken place. The fact that the Prophet ﷺ receiving revelation, the Quran being revealed in Ramadan, in a particular year, the birth of the Prophet ﷺ, all of these dates could have been taken as a starting point for the Islamic calendar, but none of those dates and events mark the beginning of the Islamic calendar. Rather, the Khalifa Umar ibn Khattab, he announced that the year in which the Prophet ﷺ migrated and formed the Islamic authority in Medina would mark the beginning of the Hijri calendar. So when we talk about the Hijri years, we're talking about how many years has it been since the Prophet ﷺ migrated from Mecca to Medina. And in Medina to Munawwara, that was seen, the migration was deemed by Khalifa Umar ibn Khattab and the Sahaba radiallahu anhum as the greatest watershed moment for the early Muslims, because that was of the greatest political significance in terms of the Hijrah, right? Because the Hijrah, right, political significance of the Hijrah was that the Muslims were able to establish themselves as an authority. Islam became a state in Medina, and finally they had the political power, regional power. They were able to now, advance and give the propagation and the invitation to Islam as a state, right? And they were able to actually convey their faith and their ideas to the surrounding regions and protect themselves and implement Islam as a fully fledged system. And therefore they took the Hijri as the starting point of the Islamic calendar. So that's something worthy to know. And then last but not least, of course, we come to the incident and the tragic events of the martyrdom of Imam Hussein. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu reports with regards to Imam Hussein, Al-Hasan and Hussein, the grandchildren of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And this is a very important point that we should mention, that the love of the family of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam is not unique and is not only for a certain segment of the Muslim community, but it's for all of the Muslim community. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam would love and would kiss and would handle, his grandchildren, Imam Hussein and Hassan, in such an intimate way, and his love for them was well known and established. And the Prophet would kiss them with great fondness, and he would say, "Oh Allah, I love them, I love him, and you love him too." So this was a great loss for the whole ummah, the whole community, and a great tragedy, right, that befell this Islamic ummah. But subhanallah, the only positive thing that we can take is that the stance of Imam Hussein, right? The stance of the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who stood up against injustice, who stood up against tyranny, who stood up against oppression. And in those times, it was the oppression and the tyranny of Yazid, right? It was the tyranny of Yazid who had usurped the position of the Khalif, right? And the Muslims whether it was Abdullah ibn Zubayr in Mecca or the Muslims in Medina, they actually rebelled against Yazid and his usurping of the Khilafah illegitimately. And it was Imam Hussein and the family of the Prophet ﷺ who stood up against Hussein and his tyranny and his oppression. And they were willing, I mean, the offers of compromise and the offers of, giving their bay'ah allegiance to Yazid were there on the table. And they could have taken the option if they wanted to, but they didn't take that option. They didn't endorse the tyrant Yazid and his tyranny, but they rather stood up to give everything in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to establish the system, to establish justice, and to establish Islam. So I think those are the kind of positive lessons that we need to take away. Don't forget also to fast on the 9th and the 10th of Muharram. And we know it's highly recommended to fast. And of course, it's an expiation of the sins of a year to come and the year to come and the year that is elapsed. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He allows us to benefit from this sacred month, this great month that is about to begin in a couple of days time. And last but not least, 1443 also starts. It is not a part of the sunnah to wish people a happy new year. We don't do that, right, as Muslims. But of course, a new year marks a new beginning. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a prosperous year. We make dua. Of course, we can make dua, we can make plans. So do that and remember us from Inspire FM in your du'as. And until next week, it is Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.